Miss rebels. As Mississippi's flagship university, we dig deeper, see farther, work harder. We pioneered human organ transplants. We helped prove Einstein's theory of gravitational waves. We are conducting life-changing research that solves the problems of today. We are Ole Miss, transforming lives and the world.
Hey, welcome to the POMcast with Stephen Willis. We're going to start in a few minutes, but I want to tell you to hit up our social sites, retweet, share, comment, like, do all of that stuff. It can only help us out and it'll make the show even better. But we're getting ready to give you a lot of good Ole Miss information, and I just thought I would tell you that because the POMcast is starting. Well, it's starting right now. Wait, no, that's a little early. It is starting right about now. Good morning. Welcome to the POMcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, on this magical mystery tour we call Ole Miss Fandom from the palatial Central Florida studios. Before we get started, though, I want to tell you about Travel and Cruise World. The number is 1-800-330-7461, just like you see in front of you. You can basically, what I want to do here is, with all these COVID restrictions and everything and being uncertain, I want you to be able to enjoy your vacation by having a local on the ground. So if you're going to Disney, you'll understand where mask mandates are, and you'll be able to prepare for them, and it won't ruin your vacation. So contact Travel and Cruise World. That's travelandcruiseworld.com, travelandcruiseworld.com for more information. Also, if you want to follow the show, you can watch the show on Twitter at the Stephen Willis and at Ole Positively, on Facebook at facebook.com/POMcast, YouTube at Positively Ole Miss. Subscribe, hit the bell. You'll not only know that we're streaming, you'll know what we're streaming about, and we're also on Twitch. We're also on Twitch at Positively Ole Miss, all one word. So that's one really cool thing. We're also audio-wise. Our podcast is on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and Pandora. We're also on smaller podcatchers as well. Can you please go into there and give us a review, 5-star review? You can say whatever you want to, but it will help with the algorithm when others are trying to search for the show, and that will help out greatly. Basically, today, for me, I'm doing a little bit of a throwback Thursday to about 19 years ago when I was at AFN. You see the polo still fits after 20 years. And all right, I mean that is where I eased into doing this. I'd already went to school way back in 99, 2000, but this is where I eased into actually doing it real world. Whenever I'm doing stories on Officers' Wives Club's event and there's something happening at the piazza going down, the Russian Navy showed up one time. And so all of that kind of ingrained and indoctrinated me into doing stuff like this. And now 20 years later, here I am doing this for all of you guys. So that is pretty fun, and I just saw it, and we're moving to polos, and I'm like, you know what, I can wear that one time and do that. But that also is AFN La Maddalena. That base doesn't exist anymore, and that AFN station doesn't exist anymore. Along with my other base doesn't exist anymore, NESJRB Willow Grove. That got shut down as well. So basically my whole time in the Navy is gone. So you live and you learn, you do things different, but that's the price you pay when you don't want to go to Norfolk or San Diego in the Navy. So a little bit about that. So anyway, we want to talk about the next set of games today. We're calling this the Ole Miss Alumni set of games, and that is because Ed Orgeron and Hugh are included in these sets of games. So it should be a lot of fun. And we are projecting 5-1 to this point. If we go to 4-2, we need to go 3-0 through this set, and this is going to be a difficult set. But if we go 5-1 to have the season we want to have, 2-1 in this set, we're still good to go. So starts off with an LSU home game. It's going to be a big game. It's going to be fun. It's going to be all the things that we expect from Ole Miss and LSU. And 5 interceptions last year is probably the only reason LSU won. They had some defense issues stopping the Lucy route, but that's beside the point. LSU did run it over and over and over again, and that's kind of a Steve Ensminger thing. Whenever he was calling shots, they found something that worked, and they did it over and over and over again. And then you have big, lumbering linebackers that struggle in coverage in the space between the linebackers and the safeties. We attack that same space. That's the space that is being attacked in modern football. It's the gaps in between the lines. And play action, bring everybody up, expand the space between the linebacker and the safeties. That should be open. When the safeties come down to try and take that away, you're free for a deep shot. That's kind of what they're doing right now in college football. Everything is kind of between the hashes because the way the RPO has forced defenses to set up is kind of a shadow coverage into their zone where they're going. So you won't walk all the way out to the receiver. You'll kind of be halfway in between because you can hopefully take care of both of them. Or more likely, you can't take away either of them. And it prevents them to throw in that diagonal pass to the outside because there's going to be a defender in between where that quick game would happen and where the ball is being thrown. So a lot of stuff is happening in the middle of the field right now. So LSU, Max Johnson is going to be the quarterback. Miles Brennan hurt his arm in a fishing accident. That's the most Mississippi story I've heard in quite some time. But it's going to be Max Johnson's job. He's probably going to win it. He's going to hold it. So I look for Miles Brennan to take the medical red shirt this year and go somewhere else next year and play football. But for this year, Max Johnson, the lefty, looks to be taking the reins. Now, people talk about his mobility, and I saw that. I don't see him as a hyper-mobile guy. I don't see him as a Matt Corral type guy. He's more along the lines of a Joe Burrow, which was very effective. I mean, that's very effective in the way to function within the pocket. Left-handed quarterback. His dad is Brad Johnson. The difference with LSU and what made the LSU team so special, and I don't think they know what made that team so special. They see the Jamar Chase and the Jordan Jefferson and the Joe Burrow, and they're trying to recreate that. And we talked about on SEC After Dark last night, it was really Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Thaddeus Moss. Their versatility allowed that offense to be unstoppable. That versatility allowed them to basically do whatever they wanted to do offensively. It's those two positions. The fact that you could split Thaddeus Moss out at wide receiver, he could work those spaces behind the linebackers. On the other side, you would have the Lucy route with Jamar Chase. And in the backfield, if pressure came in, they always released Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And he was going to be the check down. And in space, he's just a hell of a check down. LSU hasn't been able to replace the tight end position, really. They tried to with Eric Gilbert, but he transferred to Georgia. And the running back game, this is the big, burly Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis type running backs that they've been signing. And you just don't have that magic. You have a good offense, but not a great offense. I mean, that team, that might have been one of the best offenses of all time when all those guys were together. And it was because of the versatility of Thaddeus Moss and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Those two guys, they're not there. So the wide receivers are good. Kenyon Butte, very good player. Max Johnson, very good player. They're young, but you still have problems in the backfield at tight end and a little bit of depth on the outside at wide receiver. So I don't expect this offense to be anything spectacular, even though they're going to try and bring in the same type stuff that Joe Brady did in 2019. They're going to try to do a lot of the same stuff. It's not going to look the same. You don't have the same type of players, and it has a chance to, be average. And whenever this happens, Ed Orgeron is going to stick his nose into the offense whenever it's not working. They're going to go to more USC, Pete Carroll, ground and pound, and they're going to struggle. I'm one of these people that think that 6-6 is more likely for LSU this year than 10-2. I think this is probably an 8-4 type team. And if it goes really wrong, it's another 6-6. It could be a disaster. I've seen this movie with Ed Orgeron. Absolutely seen this movie. I lived through this movie with Ed Orgeron. I worked in that office, was spent most of the day across the hall from Ed Orgeron. I know what happens when things struggle. I know how he reacts when things struggle. I know how he lashes out when he doesn't understand how to get out of the hole he's in. I understand all of that. And I also understand that if LSU struggles early, he is going to meddle. He is going to try and work his way out of it because it's the way he's always done it. So, Ole Miss playing LSU in Game 7 is a little bit of a blessing. The week before Halloween. It's close. It's close to the Halloween game, but it's not the Halloween game, SEC. Get it right. And you will see them potentially drop that game in Oxford. That's a game that Ole Miss can win. I mean, other than 5 interceptions and so many turnovers, they'd won last year. So even with that defense. So that's without Elijah Moore. Jerry and Ely got hurt during that game. There's going to be pieces that are available that weren't available last year. J.J. Henry, John Rice Plumlee in the slot, Ja'Cour Pearson. A full game of Braylon Sanders. That's the one he got hurt in, and which didn't allow him to play in the bowl game. It's also the game where Dontario Drummond started to emerge as the guy. But that's a game that I think Ole Miss can win. That's a game that they're going to match up well against that team. Especially, I need to see that defense. I need to see that defense because going from Dave Aranda's 3-4 to the new 4-3 last year, they obviously didn't have the personnel to run it. That's the reason the struggles were happening. They just tried to run it straight up, and there was problems whenever you did that. Are they going to stick with the 4-3, or is it going to be a system change back to a 3-4? Are they going to do the 4-2-5, 3-3-5? Anytime you say 3-4, that can be a 3-3-5, and because it's all going to be personnel on the back end, but the defense that you're actually calling will be a 3-4 defense. Same thing with a 4-2-5. It's basically going to be a 4-2-5 or 4-3 defense. Maybe you can take that extra safety and you can do a little thing a little bit different, but most of the time it's going to sit there. It's going to be over and under defenses. Even that 4-3 and 3-4 kind of merge in there. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. But that's a big game. I always look forward to the Ole Miss LSU game every year. Every single year. I'm really excited to see that. I'm really excited to see that whenever those uniforms, when Ole Miss, by the way, wear traditionals against LSU. Don't wear traditional. If you're going to wear them one time a year, wear traditionals against LSU, because nothing looks better than that LSU white jersey and yellow helmet with the Ole Miss navy blue and red jersey. It just looks like college football. It just absolutely looks like college football. And whenever a team messes with the traditional look of that game, they generally lose. Not saying it's correlated, but that's the way it's happened over the last few years. Now, I did like whenever Ole Miss wore the powder blue helmets with the numbers. That's fine with the red jerseys and gray pants. I can handle that. But we need to make that game as traditional as possible, uniform-wise as well. It needs to be red jersey. It needs to be navy helmets. And it needs to be on Halloween, SEC office. When Texas and Oklahoma comes in and you move Alabama and Auburn over to the east, and Alabama and LSU are not playing because permanent opponents are going to be done away with, I do believe, and that space will be open to move Ole Miss and LSU to Halloween. It belongs on Halloween. It's a Halloween game. The whole mantra of that game is around that weekend. Everything that goes on with the culture. There's people that don't even understand why the culture is what it is and why it's doing, because the game was used to be played the next to the last week, the week before Thanksgiving. but play it at Halloween. Get it right. This expansion cleans up so much. The only game that we really lose is Alabama LSU. And that's going to be replaced by LSU in Texas and LSU in Oklahoma. But the only game we're really going to lose is Alabama and LSU. And that bye week is the reason Ole Miss and LSU is not on Halloween. That game goes away, that date better be set. Period. End of story. It's the way things work. Anyway, we're going to take a short break and we're going to come back and talk about, let's see, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the next two games, the Auburn game at Auburn and home against Liberty. And then if we have time, because that went a little longer and I thought we're going to get into the future of TV. Anyway, stick around. All right, hit the wrong button, and we lost our bed music under this, our ramp after that, because I cleared it out of the layer because I'm a little bit of an idiot. But anyway, welcome back to the POMcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, right here from the palatial Central Florida studios. And I do want to tell you about the at Auburn game and the at Liberty game. I also want to tell you about, I think it's like, Backwards K, Beer Showers, and all that. This is the podcast from Chad Smith. And go out there and listen to that. Take that in. That's Ole Miss Baseball, 12 months out of the year. And search it on your podcatcher of choice, and it should be there. But they'll be able to keep you up to speed with what is going on with Ole Miss Baseball. It's a really good show. Check it out. Anyway, we're moving on to at Auburn. And I'm calling the LSU game a W. Now, this one could go one or two ways. I don't know what this is going to do. I don't know what Auburn is going to look like this year. This could be a W. This could be an L. We have trouble at Auburn. Everybody knows that. And, I think Jarquez Hunter, by the way, is the backup running back on the Plains. He went into Auburn as a signee and is making quite an impression with that staff. And a guy that probably would have been at Ole Miss if Rich Rod and everybody had stayed. But, not for nothing. He ended up signing day, switching, going to Auburn, and he's made quite an impression. Kind of probably the way he reminds me a little bit as far as his impression of Snoop Connor. Not necessarily the same type back, but the impression that they made when they arrived. So, Ole Miss and Auburn, everybody says Bo Nix is going to be a different animal. The defense is going to shift away from 4-3 man coverage. It's going to be a 3-4 defense, and they're going to play some zone. I'm curious about that. I just don't know what this is going to look like. It's hard to predict this game because you don't know what Auburn's going to look like 8 games into this first season with Brian Harsin. And it's going to be interesting to see. It really is. What they do. They do have Tank Bigsby, who is going to be the guy. But they have problems on the O-line. For whatever reason, Gus Malzahn struggled to recruit offensive linemen. I don't know in that system. And I think that was a little bit because he kept trying to make Auburn into a passing team when their run game was so effective. They needed a quarterback like Nick Marshall, but let's pigeonhole Jared Stidham into it. Let's go get Bo Nix. I don't think anybody knows what Bo Nix is going to look like in this offense, because Gus's offense was so different and did things, their blocking schemes and the way they handle things, it was so different. I want to see what he looks like. With Mike Bobo as the offensive coordinator, they're going to use the tight ends. Look for J.J. Pegues to have a decent year. I mean, he won a state title at Oxford. He's like a 300-pound tight end. So at a minimum, they have a guy that can catch the ball, but running the ball with Tank Bigsby, they have essentially 6 offensive linemen. Now, we saw Mike Bobo. He was the offensive coordinator at South Carolina last year. That's kind of what he wants to do, how he wants it to look. Although when he was the head coach at Colorado State, it looked a little bit different, a little bit more spread. So I don't know. Brian Harson's also an offensive mind. And his time at Boise, the offense looked like a pro-style spread. I'm curious to see what it looks like. But I'm not going to count this as a win, because too many times Ole Miss has went over there. And I think by game 8, they should have things rolling a little bit in Auburn, even if they struggled in the beginning of the season. So that would put Ole Miss at this point at 6-2. Now, the last game I want to talk about is Ole Miss versus Liberty. Hugh Freeze coming back to Oxford. And this is a game that Ole Miss should win, period. Absolutely. Better players, everything's going on. Ole Miss should win this game. Now, I'm not saying Ole Miss can't have a hiccup. Not saying that Hugh Freeze can't do it. I'm not sure Malik Willis can't play out of his mind for Liberty, and it could all be great. Now, Ole Miss will have practice playing as spy for this type of quarterback whenever they play against Louisville in game 1. So any lessons they learn in game 1 can move to game 9. Because Malik Willis, I mean, he does some things really well. He really does. He's a special quarterback and would have been perfect in Gus Malzahn's system if he would have stayed in the Nick Marshall mindset that got him to a national championship. Cam Newton won them a national championship. So let's go in there and try and sling the ball around. Malik Willis would have fit that offense. He can throw the ball well enough. He runs the ball well enough. He's just a weapon. Now, I don't know how deep they are in other places. They have a transfer, I believe, from Ole Miss on the offensive line. Oh, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Oh, I think Bryce Matthews, maybe. I think that's the guy. So it'll be interesting to see. This is a game that Ole Miss should win, period. If Liberty wins that game, it's a problem. But Ole Miss should come out of that game, as we're going through our ranked 3 games thing, after this one at 7-2, going into the last stretch that is Texas A&M at home, Vandy at home, and at Mississippi State. It's all, I don't know, I'm not going to say happening, but it's all there for them to get. It is all there for Ole Miss to be. If you can win that Auburn game, depending on that, the Auburn and Alabama game, depending on how those go, I mean, at this point, this place could be absolutely bonkers, depending on those 2 games. You're never going to predict Ole Miss to beat Alabama because there's nothing that shows you historically that you should make that prediction. There's nothing really that can show that Ole Miss is going to beat Auburn. I mean, last year, Ole Miss should have beat Auburn. Absolutely. Even with that defense and everything that was going on, they should have beat Auburn. They did not. It's just weird things happen and they end up losing that game. So I don't want to predict that Ole Miss is going to win that game. They can win that game. There's not a game on Ole Miss's schedule that Ole Miss can't win. There's not a game on the schedule that you just look at and say, yeah, that one there's no chance at. There's not a game like Vandy at Georgia. Or, okay, Vandy can't get that one. So it's important to remember that, enjoy this season. Win or lose, enjoy it. Don't I don't know, after a single loss, go absolutely crazy, because this could be a fun year. It could be a fun year regardless of the outcome. The way it's set up, the defense improvement, the offense is going to be good. It's set up to be a fun year, which is going to lead into recruiting. So how we handle this season is going to lead into 2023 recruiting. So we need to show an improvement. Now, last year we went 5-5, so improvement would be 7 to 8. They get 9. All of a sudden it becomes like, whoa, look out. Remember, good coaches are really successful in years 2. Like Nick Saban went undefeated, Urban Meyer, everywhere in year 2, whenever they can put it in. That is how you can determine the elite coach from the good coach. Because the good coach just needs to build. The elite coach is there. And I'm interested to see what this looks like this year. But through 9 games, I'm predicting 7-2. Tune in tomorrow for the last 3. And our pre-camp look at the schedule. Actually, I think camp starts Saturday. Due to Monday, it's a little bit behind, and due to the media blackout and everything's going on, I'm curious about that. So Sunday or Saturday should be that, and we'll get into our POMcast where we do the press conferences, put up the press conference highlights, and do all the stuff that we need to do. So I mean, that should be a lot of fun, and I really can't wait to do that. But let's transition real quick. We're running out of time on the day. We're down to a couple minutes left. The TV situation with Peacock taking 1 game from Notre Dame, and ESPN Plus, part of the new Disney deal, is going to get one of our games, one of our non-conference games. This year, the Austin Peay game will be on ESPN Plus. I don't know if this year it will be on SEC Network Plus. That's the question there. But would we absolutely be on ESPN Plus? And when the contract rolls over, I think the SEC Network Plus will go away, and you'll have to have a subscription to see that game. I think that is the wave of the future. I think that with all the cord cutting, you can't count on cable subscribers anymore like you used to. So they needed to find a way to basically pay for all this stuff, pay for this huge amount of money that the SEC is getting. And you can get that by mixing cable subscriptions with an over-the-top streaming service. And they figured that out, and it's like $6 a month, and you can go and watch. And they have a lot of programming on ESPN Plus if you're not a subscriber already. Peyton's Places is great. Eli's Places will be there, and it'll be a little bit different. It'll be fun, and you will see them start to phase out cable channels. Games going to, ESPNU. That'll probably be the first one, where games get phased out of that and it just gets put on ESPN Plus. And that channel will eventually go away. Now, right now they're just using it as an overflow channel, but it will eventually go away. ESPN News will eventually go away. That'll live on that over-the-top streaming service as well. And it's all about getting subscribers. It's no longer about which state you're in for carriage fees. They would get Texas and Texas A&M because they want those eyeballs on the streaming service, as opposed to being able to get it into Texas, which they could with Texas A&M. That's the difference. So pay attention to what's going on. Kansas is making moves. The Fox and ESPN war is heating up. I'll take the SEC, ACC, and AAC over the Pac-12, Big 12, and Big 10 every day and twice on Sunday. But that war is starting to heat up. I do want everybody to tune in tomorrow. We're going to talk about the last 3 games of the season, talk about what the season would look like if it did that, and expectations, of 2023 off of that season. So I want everybody to stick around tomorrow, watch the show tomorrow. And until then, I do want to say, hotty toddy. Well, yeah, hotty toddy.